New exclusive videos are waiting for you on Boosty. You can support me and follow the link to subscribe to Boosty. Enjoy watching. Description: Death took away all the people close to him, but Uchiha Obito, despite all the hardships, found the strength to follow his own path and worldview. And many years later, fate brings him together with one child, whom he did not expect to meet among the living. Chapter 4. Continuation of Training. Habitual exercise. Great things are born from small things. Hand seals fireball by the fire. Late in the evening. Obito's memories. Habit is a serious matter. Naruto chuckled to himself, jumping out of bed early in the morning. Having poured a bucket of water on himself to finally wake up, snorting, he quickly dried himself off, jumped into the clothes he had prepared the night before, and went out onto the platform in front of his new house. The morning mist rising from the damp ground hid the bright, warm sun, keeping the air so cool that even clothes warmed by the fire did not help. Taking a deep breath of the damp, rotting wood-scented air, Naruto shuddered from the cold and sighed as he began to stretch. About halfway through the routine, the sensei's attentive gaze pierced his back. Naruto wanted to look back, but remembering that this was also part of the training, he endured this gaze, not wanting to stop. The punishment could be severe. Only after finishing the complex, Naruto was able to allow himself to turn to Obito-sensei. I see you've already managed to warm up. Good, but physical exercises alone won't get you very far. Well, guess what we're going to study? Chakra? The boy squeezed out uncertainly, as if afraid of answering incorrectly. Speak more clearly, Obito demanded firmly. You must be able to express your thoughts more clearly. Chakra, sensei. Naruto put his hands behind his back, confidently looking into the eyes of his mentor, who only smirked at the boy's answer. Exactly, Obito noted, getting up from the stone and approaching the trunk of a nearby tree. Now I will show you one exercise that is designed to improve chakra control. Look, the Uchiha directed chakra to his legs and began to confidently walk along the vertical surface. Naruto opened his eyes wide at what he saw, not believing his sight and thinking that he was imagining it. Obito reached the middle of the trunk and froze in place, looking over his student's shoulder. The man smiled, seeing how Naruto reacted to this action. Wow! Naruto exhaled, his jaw dropping. How did you do that? The boy cried out, jumping up and down. Did you put glue on the soles? Of course not. Obito grinned. And breaking away from the tree, he somersaulted to his feet in front of Naruto. I just sent chakra to my feet to anchor myself to the tree. And I suggest you do the same. But how? What should we do? Standing still was beyond Naruto's strength. He shifted from foot to foot, almost jumping, but he kept glaring at Obito, demanding that he finally tell him how to walk on a tree. First, direct chakra to your legs and try to run up the tree, Obito, holding back his cheerful laughter, nevertheless condescended to explain, noting that the child had completely turned into ears, even stopping twitching. But remember, in this matter, more is not better. Give too much, and the tree bark will crack. Give too little, and your leg will not catch. In both cases you will fall, Obito said, putting on his cloak with a sweeping motion, effectively raising dust from the ground. There should be no problems with control, the Ninetales is no longer in your way, so go ahead. Naruto tightened the bandages on his ankles and ran up the tree trunk. He started falling before he reached the middle. However, a month of training with Obito had not been in vain. Naruto deftly flipped in the air and landed successfully on his feet. He did not pay attention to anything else, all his attention was focused on one unfortunate trunk of a long dead tree. Gripping the handle of the kunai tighter in his sweaty palm, the Jinchuriki ran up, directing the current of chakra into his feet. He confidently covered 2 meters, but the bark under the soles of his sandals cracked, and the boy almost fell on his back, only managing to successfully flip in the air at the last moment. For the first time, it's not bad. I shouldn't have any problems with my chakra right now, but I still can't control the trunk of this stupid tree. No, you stupid log, but I'll control you. Naruto rushed forward to control the ill-fated tree again. But he failed again. Damn you! I'll cut you down and burn you right now. I still ask you not to swear in my presence, Obito said calmly, instantly cooling his student's ardor. You shouldn't dwell so much on failures. It's better to focus on doing this than to be constantly distracted by thoughts of failures. It just did it. The boy started waving his arms and pointing at the unfortunate trunk, which refused to submit to him. This made him cringe, and the image of Sasuke appeared in his mind again. No matter what I try to do, it's always a failure. I can't even control my chakra properly. Thoughts about the nine-tailed demon constantly creep into my head. Why am I such a loser? There is no such thing as failure, Obito said politely. There is only your inexperience. You are just beginning to master ninjutsu. You awakened the chakra center only a month ago, but you already expect to accomplish great things, having barely learned to control chakra? No, Naruto, that is not how it works. All great people started with something small. Do you think that the fourth Hokage also immediately became so powerful and wise? No. He worked long and painstakingly on himself. He is the embodiment of the fact that talent without effort is simply nothing. Surely he was an inexperienced youth, surely he had problems with chakra control, because this is typical of all children. Therefore, do not set yourself great and difficult goals in advance. First achieve small things before you do something great. Uzumaki, overcome with an ephemeral sense of shame, looked away, pursing his lips. Sensei was right. Before achieving a great goal, one should start small. No one said that the path to achieving the Hokage title was easy. One had to overcome many trials, make one's body stronger, make one's mind sensitive. And most importantly, as Obito believed, teach him to be a man, but not a shinobi. Therefore, gathering all his will into a fist, the Jinchuriki placed the handle of the kunai between his teeth, raising his gaze, saturated with determination, to the tree trunk. Taking a deeper breath of the cold air of the swamp, the boy set off at all the speed available to him, dispersing chakra throughout his body and directing it downwards. If I don't do this, I won't be worthy of being called my dad's son. He mentally motivated himself, starting to quickly walk along the trunk. He felt his grip on the tree trunk begin to weaken. His chakra was still too poorly obeying him. He snatched the kunai from his teeth, managing to leave a deep cut on the top of the trunk at the last moment before falling down. Uzumaki pushed off the branch and landed delicately on his feet under the impartial gaze of his mentor. For the first time, this is a very good result. Obito appreciated the result of his students' short training. However, I think you should devote at least an hour a day to meditation in order to develop your mind and the spiritual component of the chakra. Sensei, can I ask you a question? The young Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails raised one hand, and a sparkle of curiosity danced in his bright blue eyes. Obito's silent nod served as his only answer. I saw in books that ninja use hand seals to create techniques, but I don't understand how this even works. Just make a certain seal and the jutsu will work on its own? Not at all. Obito said slowly, walking to the edge of the swamp pond and looking into the distance. Each seal used in a technique is an important element for the correct execution of the technique. A jutsu is not just a collection of random seals, but a carefully thought-out mechanism. Even one mistake in a seal can cause the technique to malfunction, because each seal has its own meaning. Obito began to slowly form seals, continuing to look forward. For example, the snake seal, he said, forming the seal first and gathering chakra in his lungs, is used to master the technique. To demonstrate, he held the seal for a few seconds so Naruto could get a better look at it before forming a second seal. The sheep seal is used to prevent your technique from harming you. Naruto looked at each of the hand seals with interest, but he didn't quite understand why Obito was demonstrating them so slowly. The third seal is a monkey, used when your jutsu contains a tricky idea and requires high concentration. Without weakening his concentration, Obito made another seal, a pig. This seal is usually used in earth release techniques, but can also be used in the techniques of the other 5 transformations. 5 transformations? What is that? I'll explain later, but for now just watch. Uchiha said, making a horse seal this time. This seal is needed to gather the bundles of chakra together. And finally, he paused for a moment, making the last seal a tiger. The tiger seal is used for concentration, and many fire elemental techniques are completed with this seal. Now watch! Fireball! Obito took a deep breath, leaned his body back slightly, and then abruptly exhaled a powerful stream of flame that took the form of a sphere of pure fire. Circles spread across the gray surface of the water, and ornate columns of steam shot up. Naruto's face was hit by the heat that emanated from the fire technique created by his mentor. Naruto watched the fireball technique in awe until the flames dissipated into the cold air. He was well acquainted with ninja techniques, but Obito's demonstration had left him deeply moved. He immediately wanted to learn how to breathe fire like the dragon in the old children's stories. The boy's eyes were shining with happiness, and he couldn't wait to repeat the seal combination and try to create such an amazing technique. Now I want to show you another exercise that will help you better control your chakra. Watch carefully. The man carefully stepped onto the water's surface and walked along it as if it were land. Wow, this is so cool! Naruto exclaimed in amazement. Walking on water is much more difficult than, for example, on a tree trunk. Therefore, it is better for you to take off your clothes so as not to risk it. When you learn to confidently stand on the surface of a tree and on water, I will begin to teach you basic ninjutsu techniques. I think you are ready to begin learning elementary techniques. It was already late evening. Myriads of twinkling stars lit up the dark velvet sky. The full moon poured its deathly pale light onto the endless swamps and lonely dead trees. A column of gray smoke poured into the night sky. The blazing fire threw up sheaves of sparks, dying out so quickly but brightly, like fireworks. Obito's slightly tired gaze was directed at the blazing fire, and his hearing was filled only with the sounds of the brushwood crackling in the fire. Everything seemed so vague and strange. Just a month ago he was just a lonely man, but by chance he met a boy whom he definitely did not expect to meet among. He had only warm and bright memories of Minato-sensei, as well as of his wife, the never despondent, but very scary and angry Kushina Uzumaki. And now he became a mentor for their son. For Obito, it was akin to a real honor as a sign of respect for his beloved teacher, to take on the training of his only son. From the warm memories that warmed his heart even in his darkest hour, a good-natured and nostalgic smile spread across Obito's thoughtful face. Sensei, what was my mother like? As if reading Obito's own thoughts, Naruto, who had been keeping a thoughtful silence until then, suddenly asked. Obito only looked away from the fire and looked closely at his student. Why tell me? Better see for yourself. In the pleasant twilight, a blood-red Sharingan flashed, drawing Naruto into an illusion. Rubbing his eyes after the flash of light, he opened his heavy eyelids and saw a familiar place, the gates of Konoha. Coming closer, he saw a tall man. Next to him stood a young woman with red hair and 3 genin. One of them was wearing a mask covering half his face and had a tanto on his back. The second one, was a girl with brown hair and paint on her cheeks. And in the 3rd genin, he unmistakably recognized his mentor. Not paying any attention to the group of genin, Naruto ran towards Kushina with a happy look. Mom! The boy exclaimed joyfully, not even paying attention to the tears. Uzumaki, with tears in his eyes, was ready to embrace her, but the boy's body passed through Kushina. Not expecting this, the boy rushed face down to the ground. Fortunately, Obito managed to catch the student in time and prevent him from hitting his face on the ground. Just watch, Obito said quietly, helping his student stand up. I don't need your help, leave me alone! The boy in orange glasses, who looked so much like the adult Obito, shouted. The adult Uchiha himself only bit his lip in shame, as if he saw a completely different boy, but not his former self. I said you will take this with you and eat every last crumb. Kushina hit the little Uchiha on the back of the head. The boy hissed in pain, starting to rub his head, while looking angrily at the scarlet-haired girl. And if you don't eat it, I'll make you do it by force. The blow made the adult Obito rub the back of his head, as if he felt a phantom pain, while involuntarily grinning. After all, Kushina was close to him, almost like a mother. Obito, you better not argue with my wife. Minato leaned over the little Uchiha so that Kushina couldn't hear. And you too? Uzumaki gave her husband a hefty slap, instantly making Minato hunch over in pain and hiss. You will do everything as I tell you. Uzumaki grabbed her husband and his student by the collars, burning both with a murderous look. Kushina-san, don't scold them so much, they will do everything your way, I will keep an eye on them. Rin inserted her word into this scene. Be as strict with them as possible, Rin-chan. Kushina let go of Minato and Obito and lightly patted the girl on the cheek. It hurts, damn it. Obito muttered discontentedly, continuing to rub the back of his head. And you know what, when I become Hokage, you won't dare just hit me. Take my word for it, but one day I will achieve this goal. Was I really that loud? The adult Uchiha slapped his face with his palm, looking at his past self. Oh, come on, sensei. I used to paint my father's face all the time at home. Naruto folded his arms over his chest, watching his teacher's memory. I'm even ashamed of it now. You know I liked you, Databane. Kushina stroked little Obito's head. What did she just say? Naruto couldn't believe his ears when he heard that word. Kushina-san often said the word Databane when she was excited. The sensei explained to his student. She called it a bad habit, but she couldn't get rid of it. Wow, I sometimes say a similar word too. That's definitely my mother. The Jinchuriki smiled broadly after listening to his mentor's explanation. Minato, if you and I ever have a son, I want him to be as determined and unbending as Obito. The woman turned to her husband, and he nodded affirmatively. I hope so too. Minato smiled. As his words ended, darkness once again enveloped the boy's vision. Opening his eyes, Naruto found himself back in reality. Thank you, sensei. Naruto bowed his head down in gratitude, smiling happily. Sensei, was mom always like this? The boy decided to clarify with his mentor, raising his gaze to his mentor again. Well, how can I put it? Obito looked thoughtfully at the ceiling, trying to remember everything he knew about this Uzumaki. Kushina-san was quite hot-tempered. She could change her mood in a second, from cheerful to sad and vice versa. But you know, she was a truly wonderful person. And I'm glad that you inherited part of your character from her. Chapter 5. The 7th Anniversary. Naruto's solitary training sensei's gift about weapons and the one who holds them duty to the mentor Konoha at night the dead the monument of boys' tears love a reason to live. The daytime sun poured gentle rays of warmth onto the autumn land. A quiet breeze slowly drove small waves across the gray surface of the lakes. Dry and long dead trees, sticking out of the dead swamp, creaked barely audibly in the wind. White clouds floated across the blue sky, driven by northern winds. The last warm days of autumn were approaching. October was approaching its middle. The usual silence over the swampy bogs and endless lakes was broken only by the distant singing of cicadas and dull knocks. A boy in a white t-shirt, white knee-length shorts and dark blue sandals persistently beat off a series of blows on the tree trunk. His small fists were wrapped in rather stretched and dirty bandages, and his spiky hair, faintly silvered by sweat, fluttered slightly in the oncoming breeze. The boy's intent, childishly serious and therefore cute gaze was riveted to the tree trunk, as if he was hypnotizing it with his gaze. Another dull blow on the tree trunk followed. Naruto's fist left a sizable dent in the tree bark, and Uzumaki finally exhaled with relief. He plopped down tiredly on a stone, raising a flask of cool water to his lips. Laying back on the cold stone in bliss, his sparkling eyes were directed towards the sky. The steadily floating clouds were reflected in them, but the once dreamy look was no longer as curious and thirsty for adventure as it had been a year ago, before meeting the teacher. Certainly, but Obito's lessons, different from what children are taught in the academy, influenced Naruto and slowly rebuilt his character. I see you've already managed to train in my absence? Well, that's good. A minute of reverent silence, interrupted only by the quiet gusts of wind, was broken by the curious voice of a young man. Naruto immediately assumed a sitting position as soon as he heard the sensei's voice. Obito stood in front of him, his hands behind his back, and a good-natured smile spread across his usually serious and indifferent face. "Today is your birthday, so let me give you a present." Obito slowly approached the astonished Naruto, who looked at him with wide eyes and did not dare to say a word, as if he was afraid of something. His gaze was fixed on the object that Obito held in his right hand. The Uchiha knelt down on one knee and handed the boy a bundle wrapped in rough beige cloth. "What is this, sensei?" "Unfold it and see for yourself." Obito handed his gift to his student with a smile on his lips, without taking his eyes off Naruto. The young Jinchuriki began to unfold the scroll with bated breath from excitement, mentally only guessing what kind of object it could be. He moved the last fold with his hand and finally saw what Obito had given him. It was a miniature katana, as if custom-made especially for the child. With trembling hands, he pulled the weapon halfway out of its sheath. His breathing seemed to have stopped. His unblinking gaze was riveted to the cold blade of the weapon, reflecting the endless blue sky and Naruto's face himself. "Well, what do you say?" Thank you, sensei," Naruto whispered reverently, putting the tanto back into its sheath. He was gradually returning to reality, moving away from his sincere, but very pleasant surprise. The boy, after stamping his feet for another second, took a step forward, embracing his mentor. This is an unrealistically cool gift." After holding Obito in his arms for a few more seconds, Naruto stepped back, continuing to examine the teacher's gift, turning it in different directions, as if he could not stop admiring it. "I could not even dream of such a thing. This is an unreal thing. With this, I will definitely become as cool as you, sensei. Or like my dad. I don't want you to become me or try to imitate anyone else," Obito said with a soft smile on his face, placing his hand on the boy's head and gently ruffling his unruly hair. "I want you to always remain yourself. Now listen." He extended his hand forward, and Naruto, by some inner inspiration, gave him the gift back. Obito tightly clutched the sheath with the weapon inside. His gaze was fixed on this gift. Memories of the past flashed in his thoughtful and darkened eyes. He wanted to forget those days, but he could not. Obito remembered the day that divided his life into before and after Rin's death and the carnage he had caused on that field. He had no control over himself. He had acted with animal cruelty, slaughtering all the ANBU without mercy. But now these were just old wounds that reminded him of a painful past. Obito had learned important lessons from that experience, and now he wanted to share them with his student. He wanted to teach him not to be a killer, but to love life. "A weapon never takes life." Obito continued to look at the tanto. He pulled it out of its sheath a little and saw his reflection in the cold steel of the blade. "Life is taken by the one who holds the weapon in his hands. A weapon can take life, but it can also protect it. This is what I want to teach you." Obito sheathed the tanto and handed it back to his student. Naruto nodded in gratitude and took the weapon with understanding in his eyes. Obito noticed how the boy was completely focused on his words, trying to remember everything his mentor was teaching him. "I gave you this weapon not for attack, but for defense. Not for you to take life, but for you to protect it." Uzumaki merely nodded, though he did not quite understand what Obito wanted to say. But Obito smiled and patted his student on the head. The boy was still too young, but in time he would understand exactly what Obito was trying to convey to him. The man slowly straightened up to his full height and thoughtfully looked into the distance where the blue peaks of the mountain ranges were visible above the horizon, and closer to the sky, dried-up white trees stretched. And somewhere there, on the horizon of the future, images of what kind of future awaited his student arose in his mind. A boy who knew the pain of loneliness too early, whose thoughts were filled with hatred and resentment, but now they changed for the better. Obito could only guess what fate awaited his student, but he knew one thing: Naruto would become a great man, like his father. Who knows, maybe this child's significance lies not only in being a vessel for the power of the nine-tailed demon fox, but in something more? In the end, 2 lives are nothing on the scale of hundreds of thousands of human destinies. But the meeting of teacher and student has already predetermined much. Exactly a year had passed since that very moment, when a chance meeting in the pouring rain changed their destinies. Obito had become attached to the little boy and considered it his duty to raise him to be a worthy person. The kind of person Minato-sensei and Kushina-san would like to see. The boy was still haunted by the ghosts of his past. He had not forgotten the nightmare he had experienced, but Obito was confident in his student's strength. He would definitely crush his hatred once and for all. He would find the strength to forgive. Uchiha turned his gaze back, dropping it on his young student. He continued to examine the Tanto blade sparkling in the sun with eyes burning with curiosity and joy. But in his mind, the words about what he should do with this weapon echoed quietly. But whose life should he protect? His own? Or the life of someone else? Naruto did not understand the meaning of these questions, and the boy decided that he did not need it yet, because the main thing was that the sensei gave him such a cool thing. "It's getting late," Obito said, looking at the sun slowly floating towards the western sky. "Well, I think there's a place you and I can visit today." The night air of Konoha greeted them with cold and dampness. A piercing wind drove fallen leaves through puddles and swayed the bare branches of trees. The full moon shone in the sky, and myriads of stars twinkled on the black velvet of the unattainable heights of the firmament. Naruto, standing next to his mentor, slowly looked around. In the light of the pale moon, he could see the great tombstones and in the distance, the Hokage monument. It seemed that Konoha had not changed in the past year, and remained the same as it was that very day, gloomy and cold, like a late autumn rain on a November night. The silence of the night was broken by quiet footsteps. Obito's tall silhouette glided smoothly between the graves, like a restless soul. His long black cloak, which hid almost his entire body and covered his head, fluttered in the wind and resembled the black wings of an angel of death who had come for his harvest. The cold approached his body, despite the black raincoat that reliably protected him from the water. Pain awoke in the corners of his wounded heart, and Obito seemed to feel many gazes on him from the darkness surrounding him. The gazes of all those who had died 7 years ago on that fateful day. In the howling of the wind, piercing with its cold, quiet and distant echoes of the tragic past could be heard. People screamed before they died and fell silent forever. In the eyes of the dead people lying in the cemetery, the boy read only reproach and contempt. He followed Obito, and his gaze was empty and devoid of joy and curiosity. Naruto was lost in dark thoughts, his heart beating faster and faster. He saw the lost souls that were destroyed by the wrath of the nine-tailed fox. An illusion, nothing more, Obito thought as he continued walking through the cemetery between the great tombstones. Obito and Naruto approached a tall monument in the form of writhing tongues of red flame. On the gray stone of the monument lay many flowers. Drops of rain faintly sparkled in the moonlight, resembling pale pearls. Here and there, ritual candles were burning low, from which small streams of steam rose into the air. People came here during the day to remember their loved ones. Uzumaki quietly and slowly approached Obito, who froze at the monument. The boy, as if seeking consolation, squeezed the edge of Obito's sleeve in his palm. The Uchiha knelt down and laid the bouquet with the others. His eye closed by itself, his hands came together in a prayerful gesture, and calm slowly spread inside, persistently fighting with the roaring echoes of mental anguish about the past, which could not be changed in any way. If he had at least one chance to change the past for the better, to make it so that Minato-sensei, Kushina-san, his parents and grandmother would remain alive, he would give everything for this. But Obito was a realist, and understood that his hopes were nothing more than unattainable dreams of a better life, which had slipped out of his hands too early. But fate had given him a student. A chance to pass on his teachings and philosophy to another. Someone who would carry that worldview forward. Perhaps, Obito reasoned, this boy was destined to have a profound impact on the world system. To change this damned shinobi world for the better? Obito couldn't know for sure, for Naruto still had much to teach. He could only hear the student standing next to him trembling and quietly mourning his parents. A long and oppressive silence hung between them. Each was thinking about something the other didn't even know about. The wind gradually died down, and the silence became even more tense. Obito looked at the many bouquets, the smoldering candles, and the photos of Naruto's parents. The boy slowly stepped forward and stopped in front of the photos of a smiling man with wheat-colored hair and a pretty woman with red hair. His heart ached painfully, and he barely held back his tears. 2 crystal tears fell from his cheeks, breaking on the cold stones and turning into nothing. The boy sobbed, wiping the tears from his eyes with the back of his hand. His lips trembled, tears continued to cut his cheeks one after another and burned stronger than any fire. Cut more painfully than any blade. He slowly lowered his gaze, no longer able to look at the 2 photographs of the 2 dearest people he never got to know. Obito, who had been silently standing next to his student with his head bowed and his hands folded in a prayer gesture, straightened up to his full height. He stood next to Naruto, placing his hand on his student's shoulder and feeling the boy shudder and cry. He looked so tiny and defenseless that he wanted to hug him right now and try to comfort him. But was that able to bring the dead back to life even for a short moment and ease the mental torment? Obito clearly knew that it was not. Sensei. Naruto's quiet and sorrowful voice broke the silence. The boy looked up, and his painful gaze, filled with nothing but pain, seemed to be looking into Obito's very soul. Why did this happen? Why did they die, and I'm alive? Why? It would have been better if I had died that day. Don't say that. Obito replied almost immediately. What happened was not your fault and never was, Naruto. You couldn't have changed the outcome of that night. No one could. But why? Naruto asked, constantly sobbing and shaking not from the cold, but from crying. The veil of tears in front of his eyes prevented him from seeing Obito's thoughtful and gloomy expression. It hurts me because of this. Why did they all die, and I'm alive? Am I really to blame for the fact that my mom and dad died? Am I a murderer? He spoke as if there was nothing good and joyful left in his soul, only a black emptiness of despair and hopelessness. A small chill involuntarily ran down Obito's spine. It hurt him to look at his student, crushed by grief and sorrow for his parents. No! Obito cut him off with a firm and decisive voice, looking at him with cold severity and wisdom in his eyes. You are a man, and your name is Naruto. Uzumaki. You are the son of the bravest man I can remember, and the kindest and most compassionate woman. Your parents' love is still alive inside you. They gave their lives for you, Naruto, so that their son could live. Their love saved you that day and will save you many more times. They are alive inside you and protect you from all harm, but I so wanted them to come back to life, even for a moment. I so wanted to see them for real, Sensei. But you don't have the power to bring the dead back to life, Naruto. None of us have the power. Obito shook his head in disappointment, trying to find the words to calm his student. When we lose someone close to us, a part of our soul dies with them. We lose a part of our former selves. There is no place in our world where love for one's neighbor is not overshadowed by the bitterness of loss. But doesn't our love only become stronger from this? Naruto wiped the tears from his eyes and looked at Obito, who towered over him, with a frozen heart. A child should not grow up without parental love, but your parents' love will always live with you. Uzumaki looked back, stopping his gaze once again on the photos of the 4th Hokage and his wife. His father's warm smile and his mother's piercing gaze made Naruto stop crying. It really felt like they were standing next to him now. That they were there, even if invisible, looking at their son and always ready to come to him, even in the most difficult and darkest hour of his life. I never knew them, but I still love them. The boy lowered his eyes to the cold stone under his feet, clenching his hands into fists. There was a slight irritation from tears on his cheeks, and the pain in the corners of his soul gradually subsided and went into oblivion. His heart was warmed by the warmth. There are bonds that can transcend even death itself. Obito placed his hands behind his back, his thoughtful gaze directed towards the Hokage monument, illuminated by the pale light of the moon. A small smile, full of hope, appeared on the man's thin lips, touched by old scars. Love cannot bring the dead back to life, but it can change the lives of the living for the better. Please remember this, Naruto. Do not be indifferent to the fates of others. Love this life, for it is the most precious thing you have. Honor the sacrifice of your parents, for their love conquered death itself so that you could live. Live this life happily for them, of course, sensei, Naruto said with a smile through his tears. Obito smiled kindly, running his hand over Naruto's head and tousling his already wild hair even more. He slowly and with pleasure inhaled the fresh night air when the wind finally died down. Naruto finally calmed down and looked up at his mentor, who looked calm and confident, and in whose gaze one could read real wisdom and strength that Naruto so desired to learn. And for himself, he decided that one day he would become as strong and smart as his teacher. But that's not just a sacrifice, Naruto. Obito looked indulgently at his student, whose gaze was slowly returning to its usual shade of joy and curiosity. The love of your father and your mother is still alive in you. They were not afraid to lose their lives for you and all of Konoha. This is not just sacrifice or love. This is the triumph of life over death. Therefore, always do the right thing, love life and be compassionate, for these are two forces that can change people for the better.